Hello, everybody, and welcome. We are Lizzie and Justin from Thirdspace, and it is in the UK Sunday morning, and we are together and live for this week's Turning Towards Life. Lizzie, it's so good to be sitting here opposite you. I'm actually feeling very grateful for technology today because you're in one part of London and I'm in another part of London as we usually are, and it feels to me like we're just face to face. And I know how many people say that Zoom and all those technologies are so tiring, but actually, I find that with suitable kind of preparation and presence and contactfulness, it's just like sitting here with you. So, thank you for being here again, this 351st week of our talking with one another, and welcome to all of you. We very often say a very extensive welcome to all of you who are here with us in all the different ways, places, and times. And I just want to say welcome to all of you who are with us at all the different ways, places, and times. We have a really wonderful source that I think Lizzie could potentially take us into weeks of conversation in many directions. And I'm very grateful to you for finding it, as you always do. And I want to put us all in your hands so that
Mm.
you can speak to us and we can begin.
Thank you, Justin. Hello, everybody. Good morning, Justin. And this is this book that we're reading the source from today, Justin, is called The Creative Act, A Way of Being by Rick Rubin. And my husband got this book for me for my birthday as a kind of integrating book, because maybe it's something that listeners might not know, Justin, but I've worked in the music industry for a very long time. And so people who make music are a kind of familiar kind of person. Of course, they're all different in all kinds of ways, but there's something about the music making process that is meaningful to me in my life. And so he brought me this book as a kind of marrying of the worlds of the music world that I've been a part of for a really long time, mostly from a kind of business organizational perspective. And this work, which is such a big part of my life too. And so Rick Rubin is a long time, very well known music producer, and he's written this book about creativity. And I had never seen this book and didn't know it existed. And I've been kind of devouring it. And it's one of those really wonderful books where you can flick to any page because it has, as he describes it at the beginning, 78 areas of thought. And those areas of thought are all kinds of different things like habits, experimentation, a whisper out of time, expect a surprise, cooperation, the prism of self, context, adaptation, the possessed, like all these different titles, and they're quite easy to read chapters. And so I've chosen one from here that feels like we should never stop talking about it, which is listening and communication. And so we're going to read this. But the cool thing that happened is when I posted this, Justin, and as you know, Justin, but maybe listeners don't, we post the source before we do it. So we post it normally on a Friday. I was late this week and posted it on the Saturday morning, but normally it comes on a Friday from either you, Justin, or me. And then people can comment on it and say some things. And this week it was really sweet because Alexandra Bealey commented publicly on Facebook underneath our source and said something about it in response. So this week we're going to include what she has said too. And Alexandra is a graduate of our year-long coaching program and a very lovely friend of Thirdspace and does some incredible work in the world. So it's also a really nice moment to appreciate Alexandra and what she does in the world. And she does very kind of deep shadow work and facilitates these processes for people. And recently she set up her Instagram channel and she named this, I think, a passion project for her. So it's something very, very deep and meaningful in her life. And to have her voice in the conversation too just feels very wonderful. So Alexandra, thank you for always commenting actually so openly and freely and being with us so full-heartedly in the conversation. And we know you are and we feel you are. So thank you. And we're going to read part of her comment as well at the end of the source. So the source is a couple of paragraphs from Rick Rubin's book in the chapter called Listening. And I'm going to read and then read the comment, and Justin, then it will be, as usual, your turn to read, and we'll just see where we go with it. So here we go. And thank you to Rick Rubin for writing from this place of extensive experience and depth of understanding of the creative process. It's really quite wonderful. So here we go. Communication moves in two directions, even when one person speaks and another listens silently. When the listener is totally present, the speaker often communicates differently. Most people aren't used to being fully heard, and it can be jarring for them. Sometimes we block the flow of information being offered and compromise true listening. Our critical mind may kick in, taking note of what we agree with and what we don't, or what we like and dislike. We may look for reasons to distrust the speaker or make them wrong. Formulating an opinion is not listening. Neither is preparing a response or defending our position or attacking another's. To listen impatiently is to hear nothing at all. Listening is suspending disbelief. We are openly receiving, paying attention with no preconceived ideas. The only goal is to fully and clearly understand what is being transmitted, remaining totally present with what's being expressed and allowing it to be what it is. So that's the end of the piece by Rick Rubin. And then Alexandra said, I have learned that communication exists in 4 dimensions, maybe self to other, other to self, self to self, and other to other. So I would add that when the listener is fully present, the gift to the speaker is also that they can come to know themselves in a new way through being so listened to and communicate to themselves from that new place. And that both the speaker and the listener are changed by the caliber and quality of listening, such that they both then take that into conversations with others, which then impacts those others' communication with more others. So that's what Alexandra had to add as well. And I really wanted to include that so that we can speak to that when we wander in too as well, Justin.
Thank you, Lizzie and Rick and Alexandra. This is so fun and excellent, having already multiple layers. We've got an original source, and then we've got commentary on the source, and then we've got our commentary that comes from our speaking with one another, and then we've got all of the layers of other commentary and interpretation and understanding that are going on in all of you who are listening alongside us as well. So when I read Alexandra's bit, as I'm going to, we can sort of expand. It goes in this format, it goes in many more than 4 directions, actually. I wanted to add to what you said, Lizzie, before I read this, that for any of you who are with us, the way to join in with that conversation is to join our Facebook group, which is a private Facebook group, so you have to ask to join. And we made it that way very, very deliberately, but it's open to everyone. So you can come and join our Facebook group. You'll see the source in advance every week, and you are so welcome to join in the conversation, as Alexandra has. Thank you, Alexandra. Here's Rick Rubin. Communication moves in 2 directions, even when one person speaks and another listens silently. When the listener is totally present, the speaker often communicates differently. Many people aren't used to being fully heard, and it can be jarring for them. Sometimes we block the flow of information being offered and compromise true listening. Our critical mind may kick in, taking note of what we agree with and what we don't, or what we like and dislike. We may look for reasons to distrust the speaker or make them wrong. Formulating an opinion is not listening. Neither is preparing a response or defending a position or attacking another's. To listen impatiently is to hear nothing at all. Listening is suspending disbelief. We are openly receiving, paying attention with no preconceived ideas. The only goal is to fully and clearly understand what is being transmitted, remaining totally present with what's being expressed, and allowing it to be what it is. And then Alexandra's commentary. I've learned that communication moves in four directions or exists in four dimensions: self to other and other to self, self to self and other to other. So when the listener is fully present, the gift to the speaker is also that they can come to know themselves in a new way through being so listened to and communicate to themselves from that new place. And both the speaker and the listener are changed by the caliber and quality of listening, so that they both take that into conversations with others, which then impacts those others' communication with more others.
Thank you, Justin. I feel like I always know we've chosen good sources because I feel completely discombobulated in the listening, even when I've chosen them myself and I've read them 100 times. And this one's doing that to me right now. And I suppose maybe that is one of the qualities of listening, is that as I sit and listen here, this is happening to me now, is that out of the listening, where I haven't been thinking, what am I going to say? Or how am I going to say it? There's something creative happening. I can feel the the somethingness of my inner world kind of rattling around, wondering, and not yet having language for what's happening. And I'm wondering about, maybe that's what makes listening such a challenge for all of us regular everyday humans, because it's vulnerable. I can feel my vulnerability of really listening and not having prepared anything. I haven't been defensive. I haven't attacked Rick Rubin or Alexandra in my mind. I haven't been impatient. And so, and I haven't made anyone wrong or distrusted anything. Like I feel like I've really listened. And there is something undoing about that. And so to have my breath and my body in support of this kind of openness is really quite something. And when I imagine this kind of self, which is quite empty of all of those things that Rick's writing about, I'm feeling this feeling of how could it not then afford the person with me to be a different person, as in say different things than they would otherwise say if they could feel like I was trying to find something or trying to make them wrong in some way or looking for a point that I could pick them up on. And Justin, this is what drives me bonkers about, I don't know how journalism works in other countries, but this is, I think, what makes it really hard for me to listen to radio programs where the journalism is extremely directed towards a certain outcome that the journalist wants or something. Because I think this kind of listening is like gold. And so many people are on the radio here in the UK where I really actually want to know them and I want to listen to them, but they never get even a chance. They don't get given a chance to say the thing that they really want to say or who they are because of the directionality of the listener and the kind of facilitator of the conversation. So I often fantasize about a world where everyday things could be spoken about with the kind of quality of listening that Rick and Alexandra are talking about. And I feel like there's a kind of sadness in me that I know this exists in kind of therapeutic spaces, and the spaces that we're in, Justin, often have this inside of them. And it's part of how we teach our people who come and learn with us to be in conversation with one another and be present to one another. But there's a grief in me that it doesn't exist in ordinary everydayness, that this listening would be on the radio and on the telly and in the street and all of the places that we get to receive life in a very ordinary, everyday way. And I'm feeling that now. It's like, how different would the world be if Rick and Alexandra's thoughts and words and understandings could be part of the world in a wider way.
Because whilst you were speaking, Lizzie, really feeling into how what Rick and Alexandra are both writing about here is what we've been practicing for 351 conversations now, and in many other places. And I was feeling into, Rick has all of these very, very useful distinctions about ways in which we might think that we're listening, but we're not. Like formulating a response or trying to defend something or all of those kind of things. And really what I was going to come alongside you with your wish that more conversation in the world could be that way. Because the way that we're talking about, the way that Rick and Alexandra are inviting us into, one of the ways it seems to me what's happening with listening is that when you speak, and obviously you have a whole world behind the words that come out of your mouth. There's a whole world of Lizzie and your life. You are an entire world. And then words and all of the feeling and all of the motion and everything that comes out, and that reaches me. And it's not all audible, of course. There's the feeling of being with you, and that's why I can see you as well, because I can see, and which isn't available to everyone, but it's available to me here and talking to you. And all of that arrives with me. And I'm a world too. And so already what you say, it's not like what you say can be, it doesn't mean, it will mean something to you, but by the time it reaches me, it means something to me because of the world that I already am, my history and my culture and my background and the history of our friendship and our working together and what particular words mean. All of that is already going on when you reach me. So it's already inherent in human communication that I'm listening to what you say as the particular kind of person with the particular kind of world that I am, and I will already be listening differently to someone who's had a different history and different experiences and comes from a different cultural background. So there's all of that is just present from the start. And one of the things that I've been finding is that there's no way round that apart from opening and opening and opening myself to the world more and more in every way that I possibly can, not just when I'm with you. So my curiosity and openness to the world really helps me to listen to you. The thing then that I was experiencing when you were talking is how much this is to do with the body as well. That all of these things that Rick lists, formulating opinion, preparing response, defending opposition, I know when they're going on if I pay attention to my body, because I tighten up and I tense up and I can feel the openness of my, if I'm facing you and you're coming to me from the front, I can feel the way that the front of me stays open or gets tight. With a little bit of attention, it's quite clear that what I'm doing, either by my thinking or with my body, is kind of shaping like how wide an opening I can be with you. And I'm involved in some conversations in my life, Lizzie, at the moment. I was really thinking about these whilst you were talking, where really what I want to do is to defend my position, prepare a response, interrupt the other person. There are very fierce protector parts in me that want certain things to happen and don't want the other person to be saying what they're saying or thinking what they're thinking. It was really apparent to me. And I think Rick and Alexandra are exactly on it, which is that when we don't do that, sometimes we have to, but when we don't, there really is a chance that I might get changed by being with you because I'm not shaping and constricting the space into which everything comes. So the already just in shape space doesn't even get really teeny weeny, opening. That if I can receive you in your fullness as much as I can, then I will be changed. Doesn't mean will come to see the world in exactly the same way, but my world will shift because the world that I am got bigger because I allowed myself to include you. And like both Rick and Alexandra then point to, is that when we're with somebody who's doing that, we get changed too, because the experience of being with someone as they change from what we've said shows us ourselves in ways that we'll never get when all we're seeing from the other person is their defensiveness or their wish to control us or whatever. So there's something here about it's such a huge possibility for us humans to bring our worlds to one another and to open our worlds to one another by speaking and listening, which is what we do, and to allow our worlds, the language I would use is to be deepened and widened by our encounter with one another, which then deepens and widens everyone who's involved in the conversation. And that we sort of lend one another our mutual openness. The more wide open I can be with you, the more chance you have of being wide open with me and with yourself. And it's almost like what happens is we get into contact with capacities for opening and unfolding together that so much speaking and listening doesn't produce. If we're not doing what Rick and Alexandra and we're saying, we can have the kind of speech that closes worlds. And that's what a lot of the radio, in this, we're recording this the week before a general election in the UK. So, of course, a lot of the radio is that kind of combative interviewing of politicians rather than the really wondering, the really humanizing and all of that. That's what we hear.
I'm feeling, Justin, as well as you're speaking into this self and other dynamic and how it opens both my world and your world when this kind of listening happens. And also remembering what Alexandra was pointing to in part, which was that as I'm doing that with you, that kind of open listening, and maybe you're open too, maybe you're not, but if I'm doing it, it does change my relationship with myself. And I think this is one of the things that Alexandra's pointing to. Like, I can feel in the listening that was just happening just now that, yes, of course, I'm listening to you, and my openness to you is an intention I'm holding and allowing your words to land inside of me. And in the doing of that, I can feel that simultaneously my capacity to listen to myself is changed. So there's a response inside of me that may come out as words back to you, if that's what the exchange is about. But it might be like a one-way thing. Like, I might be listening to this podcast and I might then be finding access to pieces of myself that are there to be listened to because of what got said here. So who knows, Justin, people might be wandering around at the moment listening to us, walking their dog by the river, or whatever the stories we've heard of how people listen to us, being helped to go to sleep sometimes. And in that seemingly one-way listening, where there's no words coming back in the other direction, there is an inner conversation that gets begun of wondering and going, oh my gosh, I hadn't thought of it like that before. Or, oh my goodness, I'm noticing all the ways that I try and make people wrong when they're talking to me, and I've never understood that about myself before. That's a conversation that's happening on the inside of us. That's not to do with this between two human bodies communication thing, but it's to do with what's happening on the inside of me. And I'm suddenly in a real appreciation for that. And, Justin, you've done this for me many times where you've been talking not necessarily directly to me, but maybe to another person. And I've listened to you a lot in my life. And I've gone, oh my gosh, it's opened a world inside of me to hear the words that you have said, or the words that you've written, or the conversation you've had with another person, and I've been present to it. And revealed things to me on the inside about myself that I would never have been in contact with had I not been listening in that kind of way. And equally, there might be things that I have listened to where, so this morning there was some, and as I said, the radio is not my favorite thing, but it's my husband's favorite thing. So I often have to listen to snippets of it. And something got said this morning, and I could feel this big fear response in my body coming up. And I think that's part of my grief, is because I really do, I can't help but listen. You know, you were saying about having the body of someone who listens. I can't really switch that on and off. I can't really go, I'm not listening now. It's like a way of being. Like, this book is called The Creative Act, a way of being. I feel like I have quite a listening way of being. So things hit me on the inside quite deeply, whether I want them to or not, in some cases. And I could feel this fear response in my body of like, if that's true, like we're all doomed kind of feeling. And because then the saving grace of it is that I would rather that didn't have to happen as soon as I wake up in the morning and I'm brushing my teeth or whatever. But I could listen and say, there's a part of me that's really afraid, that just got woken up in the hearing of this. And then I could, in the listening to that part that came forth, I could welcome it and say, my goodness, that was quite something, this big reaction on the inside. And I could love that part that rose up. And then I didn't have to become that for my day. But I could also feel the history of me where that would have been like, okay, if that's true, well, now my whole life has got to orient differently, because if that's true, that's true. Someone said it, it's true. So then the listeningness in me has at least come to the place it's at now, and will be ever evolving, I'm sure, where I can make distinctions between being afraid or being faithful or being ready or being reticent or being doubtful. Like I can listen on the inside, and I'm in this moment, I'm not able to really differentiate between that and my capacity to listen to you. I'm feeling that they're not separate. So as I listen to you and your parts, and I can welcome whatever's here, that's equal to my capacity to listen to my own parts that arise. And so practicing this intentionally is not only in service of you becoming what you need to become in the conversation, but in service of me becoming myself more and more, and having more capacity to choose in receipt of the arisings on the inside of me.
Um, but what's happening in me as you're talking, Lizzie, is it's the words that are coming in me are something like how important it is, and I think this is also what seems to me what you're saying, what Alexandra is saying, and what Rick begins to say, is how important it is when we're speaking and listening to be a listener to this world that is right here in us, in each of us. So I'm feeling very soft and open and welcoming and curious, really in wonder at being able to talk and listen to you. And there's nothing in me that feels like I have to defend or control or block or anything. There's nothing in me that feels afraid of this conversation. Of course, there are parts of me that are afraid of lots of things, but not right here. There's a part of me that's very curious about what you heard on the radio that raised that. You know, there's all of this going on. And what I feel invited into here is this aspect of, I don't want to sound like I'm trying to be clever here, but I can't think of a way of saying it, like a listening to our own listening as we listen to another person. But maybe the simpler way of saying it is how important it is to realize that we are, as I speak and listen to you, I'm really a whole world of different parts of me in relationship to one another, and things are happening in me as I'm speaking. And as sometimes I frighten myself, by the way, I don't know if you ever have this, I'll say something and it frightened part of me because I just said this. So and I think a lot of us in the world, we live in a world that doesn't give us a lot of support in paying attention to the movements inside us as we speak and listen to people, and doesn't give us a lot of support in paying attention to the movements inside other people as we speak and listen to one another. Like if you and I are in some kind of disagreement, actually, there's such a productive conversation to go, here's what's happening in me as we speak, and Lizzie, I wonder what's happening in you as we speak, which goes way underneath the content of the words that we're saying together to one another. And I was thinking, Lizzie, about how often when I'm in a conversation where I'm coaching someone, I was thinking about how wonderful it would be to do this more often in the world. I'll say something or they'll say something, and I'll say to them, what's happening right now from what I said or from what you said. And it's an invitation to go, oh, there's part of me that's
Mm,
feeling really afraid. And I sort of got defensive, and then my throat got tight, and I feel like I'm closing down, or I feel a huge sense of release. It draws our attention to this phenomenon that stuff is happening. The world of the listener and the speaker are changing all the time. And I was sort of just beginning to fantasize about what it would be. I'm thinking about a conversation I need to have probably later today with someone with whom I'm in big disagreement and where some important things are at stake. So it's not just that we'll listen to one another, or there's some things that I think really need to happen and not happen. It's like it's a conversation that goes beyond just understanding one another. So there's a lot. It's a high stakes conversation in a way that this one between you and me is high stakes because we're public, and but it's not high stakes. I'm imagining what it would be like to make it possible for me to go to that person. What's it like for you to be in this conversation with me? What's happening for
mm,
you as we talk and disagree and feel strongly about things? And here's what's happening in me. And it would give us this place in this four directional conversation. It would make the four directions that are going on much more available to one another.
yeah.
It might help us get out of just being two people who meet head to head,
Mm,
and try and convince one another of things. It might be a way into one another's world. So I'm very
mm,
glad to be glad to be taking that possibility into my life of today, actually.
mm. Thank you, Justin. I'm imagining you being really brave and doing something that you don't normally do with this person. Just one line or something of, should we take a breath or something? My goodness. So I want to wish you the very best with your conversation, Justin. And I want to thank Alexandra and Rick. And I want to just mention, so if you're watching this on a video, which I know many people do, this is the book by Rick Rubin, which I completely love and think everybody in the whole world should read it. And then also to tell you that if you want to find Alexandra's work, she has a brand spanking new Instagram channel, and it's called Shadow Work Retreats. So if you go to Instagram at Shadow Work Retreats, and you'll find the wonderful Alexandra Bealey there. And I think other people that she works with are featured in that too. I think it's not just Alexandra on her own. So I want to thank you, Alexandra, for commenting always and being part of our community and listening and doing what you do in the world. Alexandra, by the way, everybody, is like a very, very safe person in my bodily experience of her. And if you feel drawn to being anywhere near her work, please do go for it. And I want to thank Rick Rubin, and just the generosity of people writing stuff, Justin, is extraordinary, isn't it? That people's lives experience and work and intention gets to be come into my home and I can listen to it through a book. How extraordinary. And I want to appreciate this invitation, Justin, that I'm taking from being together, where we can remind each other about our listening by asking each other, what's it like to be in what you're in right now, which is a reminder to listen to oneself. And I'm really grateful for that invitation from you today, Justin. So thank you, everyone, for listening. Thank you, Justin, for being you and being the listening that you are in the world. And thank you all for being the listening that you are to us, so that we get to be here and speak to you every week. And we will be back next week with a source from Justin. And we look forward to being here again then.
Thanks, everyone. Bye bye.